The observation deck of the Covenant's end hummed with the quiet efficiency of a warship pretending to be at peace. Elsa Moravik stood before the reinforced viewport, her reflection ghostly against the backdrop of the Terran-Zalthrine border zone. Beyond the glass, the diplomatic station Harmony's Promise rotated slowly, its white panels gleaming like false hope in the starlight. "You're thinking too loud again," Verk said, materializing beside her with 2 cups of synthetic coffee. His augmented eye, a gift from the Battle of Proxima Ridge, flickered blue as it analyzed the station's energy signatures. Elsa accepted the cup without looking away from the station. "They're running 0.7% over optimal power consumption, weapon capacitors." "I know," Verk's jaw tightened. "Admiral Chen knows too, everyone knows. And yet here we are, playing dress-up for a peace treaty that both sides know is worthless." Elsa finally turned to face her partner. They'd served together for 8 years, ever since the Zalthrine hegemony had glassed the colony world of New Vancouver, and humanity had learned the galaxy's most important lesson: trust no one. Verk smiled, but it didn't reach his natural eye. "Because that's what humanity does best. We pretend we don't see the knife while we forge our own." 3 hours later, Elsa stood in formation aboard Harmony's Promise, her dress uniform uncomfortably stiff after months in combat gear. The Terran delegation occupied the station's western hemisphere. The Zalthrine delegation mirrored them from the east. Between them, a neutral zone filled with cameras, sensors, and enough diplomatic platitudes to choke a black hole. Ambassador Wei, humanity's chief negotiator, was a small woman with iron in her spine and calculations in her eyes. She smiled as the Zalthrine High Arbiter Zexthal entered the chamber, his chitinous frame clicking against the deck plating. "We gather here," Wei began, her voice carrying across the space, "to end a conflict that has cost both our civilizations dearly." Elsa's neural implant pinged softly, a private channel from Verk, who was stationed in the security rotation outside. The Zalthrine just activated their long-range communications array. Encrypted burst toward their fleet in the Deneb sector. Elsa's fingers moved subtly at her side, tapping out a response in military code against her thigh. "Anticipated. Pattern matches simulation 7. Because that was humanity's secret, the one the Zalthrine hadn't learned despite 3 years of war. Humans were exceptional liars, but even better, they were exceptional at knowing when they were being lied to. The Zalthrine thought they were clever. Their peace overture had come after the stalemate at the Kepler line, when both fleets had bloodied each other to exhaustion. The treaty offered territorial concessions, technology exchanges, and a mutual defense pact. On paper, it was generous, suspiciously so. Terran intelligence had run the analysis within hours. Probability of genuine peace, 2.3%. Probability of trap, 91.7%. The remaining 6% accounted for scenarios too chaotic to model. So humanity had done what it always did when faced with impossible odds. It had smiled, nodded, and prepared for war while pretending to prepare for peace. Article 7, Ambassador Wei continued, establishes mutual reduction of military forces in the border sectors. Zexthal's mandibles clicked in what the translation software rendered as agreement. "Our fleets withdraw to create a demilitarized zone. Trust, built through action." Elsa felt her implant ping again. This time it was Admiral Chen on the command channel, broadcasting to every Terran military asset in the system. Phase 2. All units acknowledge. Across human-controlled space, the charade shifted. Ships that had been decommissioned for the peace process activated their military-grade reactors. Crew members who had been reassigned to civilian duties returned to battle stations. Weapons platforms disguised as mining facilities dropped their camouflage. The Zalthrine had made their fatal mistake 3 months ago when they'd proposed the treaty. They'd assumed humanity would be grateful, relieved, desperate for peace. They hadn't understood that humans had been preparing for betrayal since the moment they'd first looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. Because humans remembered. They remembered the Forerunner War from their ancient fiction, the Martian colonists who'd learned independence through isolation, the 100 proxy conflicts on Earth that had taught them the price of naivety. Humanity had built its entire space doctrine on a simple principle: hope for the best, prepare for the worst, and never, ever assume the other side is acting in good faith. The signing ceremony proceeded with mechanical precision. Ambassador Wei's hand was steady as she placed her biometric signature on the holographic document. Zexthal did the same, his primary manipulator leaving a chitinous print that would be analyzed by Terran xenobiologists within the hour. "To peace," Wei said, raising a glass of champagne. "To peace," Zexthal echoed, his voice a harmonized buzzing. Elsa's implant exploded with data. The Zalthrine fleet in the Deneb sector was moving, their drives lighting up like a constellation of malicious stars. ETA to human colonies, 16 hours. The treaty wasn't even fully uploaded to the databanks, and already the hegemony was breaking it. Except humanity had known. Simulation 7 had predicted this exact scenario. Zalthrine forces would use the treaty signing as a distraction, while their main fleet attacked the lightly defended agricultural worlds of the Carina Arc. What the Zalthrine didn't know was that the lightly defended colonies were anything but. The Terran Fourth Fleet had been hiding in the Carina Nebula for 6 weeks, their heat signatures masked by the stellar formation's natural radiation. They were already moving to intercept. Verk's voice crackled in Elsa's ear. The Arbiter's bodyguards just received a coded transmission. They're tensing up. "Acknowledged," Elsa whispered. "Hold position." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. The Zalthrine would reveal their betrayal, likely by attempting to seize Harmony's promise and capture the Terran delegation. They would expect panic, confusion, perhaps a desperate last stand. What they would get instead was a demonstration of why humanity had conquered its own world 3 times before even leaving its atmosphere, because humans were very, very good at war. Ambassador Wei set down her champagne glass with a soft click. Her smile remained perfectly diplomatic. "Arbiter Zexthal, before we conclude, there's one small matter. Our sensors have detected unusual fleet movements in the Deneb sector. Would you care to explain?" The room froze. Zexthal's compound eyes shifted through the spectrum, a Zalthrine tell that Terran xenopsychologists had identified 8 months ago. "I am not aware of any movements." "Really?" Wei's voice remained pleasant, conversational. "Because our intelligence suggests your Third Armada is approximately 14 hours from attacking New Hebrides, New Kyoto, and the farming stations around Tau Ceti." The Zalthrine bodyguards moved with predatory speed, but Elsa was faster. She'd been preparing for this moment since boarding the station. Her sidearm cleared its holster in 0.3 seconds, and the guard reaching for Ambassador Wei dropped with a neural disruptor bolt through his thorax. Verk and the rest of the Terran security team breached the doors simultaneously, their weapons trained with practiced precision. Outside, Elsa knew, the Covenant's End and her sister ships were deploying from their holding positions, their railguns already tracking the Zalthrine vessels that had been lurking just outside sensor range. "The peace treaty was a ruse," Ambassador Wei said calmly, as if discussing the weather, "and humanity knew it from the beginning." Zexthal's mandibles chattered in what might have been rage or fear. You planned this." "Planned? No." Wei's smile turned sharp. "We simply never stopped planning for war. You see, Arbiter, humanity learned a long time ago that hope is not a strategy. We hoped you were sincere. We hoped this treaty was genuine, but we prepared for you to be exactly what you are, conquerors wearing a mask of peace." Elsa moved to secure the Arbiter while Verk coordinated with the fleet. The tactical display in her vision showed the situation unfolding exactly as the simulations had predicted. The Zalthrine fleet at Deneb had encountered the Fourth Fleet and was sustaining heavy losses. The ships around Harmony's Promise were being systematically disabled by focused railgun fire. Across the border zone, every Zalthrine diplomatic vessel, actually disguised military craft, was being simultaneously engaged by Terran forces that had never truly demobilized. "Why?" Zexthal asked, his voice distorted by pain and confusion. "Why sign the treaty if you knew?" Elsa holstered her weapon and met the Arbiter's alien eyes. "Because now we have proof. Every government in the galaxy will see that we tried for peace. They'll see who broke the treaty first, and they'll think twice before siding with you in what comes next." Because that was the other thing humanity excelled at: narrative control. The war would continue, but now the Terran Federation would fight it with the moral high ground secured, with allies who had witnessed Zalthrine treachery firsthand. Verk appeared at Elsa's side, his augmented eye still flickering with tactical data. "Fourth Fleet reports the Deneb force is routed. Admiral Chen is broadcasting the Arbiter's surrender across all channels." "I haven't surrendered," Zexthal hissed. Ambassador Wei approached, her diplomatic mask finally falling away to reveal the strategic mind beneath. "You surrendered the moment you thought you could outwit humanity. We've been playing this game for millennia, first with each other, now with the galaxy. The peace treaty was a ruse, Arbiter. Your ruse. We just happen to be better at it than you." As Terran Marines secured the station and the Zalthrine delegation was taken into custody, Elsa found herself back at the observation viewport. The battle was over before it had truly begun. The Zalthrine had bet everything on surprise, on humanity's supposed desperation for peace. They'd lost because they'd failed to understand the fundamental truth about humanity. They were a species that had learned to walk by falling, to fly by crashing, and to reach the stars by accepting that the universe was hostile and uncaring. Trust was a luxury, preparation was survival. And humanity had been preparing for this moment since the first human had looked at another and wondered, "Are they telling the truth?" "Coffee?" Verk offered, producing another cup from somewhere in his uniform. Elsa accepted it with a tired smile. "You know, for a moment there, I actually hoped they were sincere." "I know," Verk said softly. "We all did. That's what makes us human. And the fact that we prepared for betrayal anyway. That," Verk replied, "is what makes us survivors." The Covenant's end turned toward home, her weapons still hot, her crew still vigilant. Behind them, Harmony's Promise hung in space like a monument to failed deception, a reminder that humanity had learned its lessons well. The peace treaty had been a ruse. The galaxy would remember that. But they would also remember who had seen it coming, who had planned for it, and who had turned the trap back on its makers. Humanity, too paranoid to fool, too prepared to defeat, and too stubborn to ever stop hopping for something better while planning for something worse.